This lecture is about management theories, and I'll be covering this is basically, I think, chapter 4 of the Alvaron book. I'll be going through these pages. Some of the items you're going to see, I'll talk about, some I won't. You'll need to go back to the textbook to look at some of those materials. Obviously, that textbook, this chapter can be found on Blackboard, listed as chapter 4. And we talked about the media, we talked about the prevalence of the media and the diversification of the media. And now what we want to do is we want to begin discussing the elements related to management. And when we talk about media, it could be anything from graphic communication to public relations to electronic forms of media, broadcasting, radio, television. It can be print. Management is management no matter where you are. Now, the external factors that you deal with in management may differ based upon the industry in which you are in, but the basic elements of how to work with individuals and work with employees is an ongoing process. Wherever you are, you're always managing people, and you're managing products, you're managing process. And so management, when you're in management, it's really a 7-day-a-week, 365-day-a-year job. And once you take that management position, you really can't walk away from the job ever. In essence, you're always in some form or fashion on call. You can put somebody in charge, and hopefully you will. That's a process that you should have in place to manage what you do. But you're ultimately the person responsible for what you manage. So there are many different levels of management. We're going to talk in terms of overall management and the different theories that can apply to management. And there are various schools of management that exist out there, different approaches, and one of the primary approaches, obviously, was what we would call the classical school of management. And with this particular school of management, and there are 3 divisions, you guys, by the way. There are 3 different types of management, and we'll get into each of those. But the classical school of management really developed during the Industrial Revolution. Remember, we were agrarian, meaning we worked the land, and then all of a sudden we weren't working the land as much because we had an Industrial Revolution. We had a technology revolution where there were tools that could be used to bypass having all the numbers of people that we have. And then remember, we talked about leisure in some of the previous lectures, the ability to have some leisure, but at the same time, the classical school of management really developed into 3 different places, different approaches. And Mary Parker Follett gets much of the credit for a discussion of the classical school of management, looking at business conflicts, looking at authority and power, and where the individual fits into a given group. Basically, there have been 3 different classical school approaches to management. Those include scientific management here in the United States, administrative management in France, and the bureaucratic management in Germany. Scientific management in the United States is one area that we can certainly look at in the classical school of management area. And basically the idea is that we need to increase production. One way to increase production is proper selection of employees. And then from proper selection of employees, we have to train those employees to do their jobs properly. And we'll be using some of these when we get into our business plan, because we're a modern organization. we're going to be using some elements of the classical scientific management school here in the United States, because we do like to have detailed job descriptions. And those of you, you're going to be seeking a job or you're going to be employing people, and you're going to want to have a job description that describes what a person is supposed to be actually doing. Then we oftentimes go through a very sophisticated process of selecting employees. I know various students have returned back or have commented to me, former students, over time, the methods, the things they had to go through to be selected to become an employee of an organization. I'll give you an example of a person who recently just was hired under contract to go to work for an organization, and they went through a lengthy process of interviews, meeting with different individuals in that organization, being asked to provide input in some of the business meetings. They may have been asked to write material. They may have been asked to edit something. All of those things, people that were considering them as a potential employee wanted to make certain that they had a certain skill set. And so while you have a certain skill set, organizations also have methods of training you and developing you for that position within their own organization. I think everybody needs to remember that within each new organization, you're going to find differences. And what you have to understand is you need to adapt as an employee to the differences between different organizations that come upon us. France used a slightly different management approach. It's the administrative management approach. And in this particular area, you've already kind of looked at the POC3 model, and it basically details the different functions of management. And they recognize there are basically various principles of management that exist, and Fiel identified 14 different principles of management. And I think you see this sometimes in different organizations. And what I want you to understand is, as we look at all these different models and approaches, that no doubt in most organizations there is a level of let's take some from this model and let's take some from this model to make it all work. In the administrative management approach, basically there were 14 principles of management dealing with divisions of work by specialization, and the authority and responsibility of different individuals. Also looking at the ways in which we may discipline employees, the methods of looking at the unity of command. A lot of times people want to jump over different people in different layers of command. Your supervisor is the person who will tell you what you need to do. If you jump to mid-level management or the main manager, then there may be issues of concern. And many places won't let you jump from one place to another. They say, okay, what did your supervisor say? If your supervisor told you to do something and you did it and it didn't work the way it should, the supervisor is responsible. You're not responsible. You're responsible for doing what your supervisor told you to do. In addition, the unity of direction, and that's looking at similar activities need to be managed under one particular supervisor. And always the philosophy would be that we work toward the unity and the greater good of all. We also look at wages, and we want them to be fair. And we want centralization There has to be a centralized authority, and that helps maximize production. If there are too many chiefs and not enough workers, then there's going to be miscommunication there, and the lack of centralization will definitely come to the forefront. The scalar chain, you normally think of the line of authority starting from the top and going down to the bottom. So let's say you work at an ad agency. The person who manages that ad agency is the top of the chain. And also, there has to be a level of order. In the order, we're talking about products and materials and where they're located to maximize efficiency. And oftentimes, organizations will ask their employees, how can we be more efficient? What can we do to save money? And oftentimes, if a manager will listen to those suggestions, they will save money because that worker works that particular position all the time and they can see perhaps how to save some money. There's an expectation in this approach that there will be fair and equitable treatment of everybody that's involved. There'll be some stability of tenure of personnel. Oops, and I think I misspelled personnel there. Obviously, I did. Also, initiatives, the ability to develop a plan and to say we're going to go and reach this particular goal. And then, of course, seeking a spirit of harmony among your personnel. You want people to get along so that you can achieve the goal that you want to achieve. And those are important elements of what we call the administrative management model of the classical approach. And then we have the bureaucratic management model. Max Weber developed this in Germany, and it also focuses on worker productivity. All these models really focus on worker productivity. In this particular case, there's organizational structure, there's divisions of labor and management, there's some level of central control and a system of seniority, so that you know that people who've been there longer may have greater seniority than others. And then you have strict levels of discipline and control, but you also have these policies and procedures that exist. So if you follow these, you're going to do what you're supposed to be doing if you follow the procedures. And then, of course, careful selection of workers. So what are those contributions from this particular model to current modern day management? You see a lot of organizational flowcharts, which you'll be developing an organizational flowchart in your business plan. You'll have to have job descriptions, and there will be specific guidelines for promotion and advancement in your particular organization. A lot of times people say, I got passed over, but I've been here forever. Well, sometimes there are things that maybe you didn't perform so well, and you need to perform those things better in order to be promoted and advanced. Just because you've been there a long time doesn't mean that the quality of work that you do means that you're going to get promoted. It just doesn't happen that way.